I can respond. My point wasn't that if you have a realistic game that all the mechanics need to be realistic in order for that to work. What I meant was like, it kind of goes back to my original statement. If all the mechanics are good and dialed and work with each other well, the fact that you draw your gun slow is perhaps offset by how quickly you go into crouch or by the cover density. So yes, it takes me a long time to go to bring my gun up, but I don't have to run 30 feet to get to the next piece of cover.
Right.
So that you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
So that's what I meant by like having other parts of the mechanics that maybe offset the difficulty of that, right?
Yeah.
But again, it does go back to if the controls are dialed and they feel good and they're not a hindrance in terms of just being mechanics, then I think you still have a good game. Call of Duty or no.
Right. So since we're talking about shooters, what do you guys think about games that only have deathmatch multiplayer and versus games that only have co-op or games that have both? I mean, do you think which of those three options do you think is the most ideal from a game developer standpoint right now?
Well, in terms of being able to produce something quickly, it's definitely multiplayer. Like the amount of effort required to have even the dumbest of AI is pretty. Like, make no mistake, it's a very difficult thing, and so like that's why you see a lot of games that are TDM, DM, maybe CTF or capture point if you're lucky.
Yeah.
It's because it doesn't take as much time, and a lot of these things you can buy in modules. Like hell, like if you use Unreal, that stuff's practically built in for the most part. So that's why you don't see more PvE type stuff in shooters.
I think it's like an investment versus what you actually get out of it, such that the amount of money that you spend building like a campaign in terms of hiring voice actors, hiring graphic design, scripting all the events, maybe even CGI, all of that, the amount of money you invest into that is so much more. And then, versus the amount of enjoyment that somebody gets when they buy it. The majority of people buy Call of Duty for the multiplayer, which is very easy to throw together. Some might buy it for the campaign, which is comparatively speaking much harder and requires a lot more, like capital investment to get that going, I think.
Yeah. You look at any free-to-play game, and they pretty much started out with multiplayer only, and then they got popular, they made money, and bam! Now they've got PvE, they've got zombie mode, they've got they have all these sort of asymmetrical multiplayer modes, and it's all because now they can afford to do that, and the player base is there. That will either is bored and needs new game types, or that the player base is there enough to warrant these niche game types.
Yeah, I mean, just given that, like, what would you say? What would you say populates the game industry more? Multiplayer only or single player based games? Either of you.
Can you say that again? I'm sorry.
Which do you think is more popular right now? Single-based games, single-player games, like storylines and that sort of thing, or do you think, just multiplayer-only type of games?
That's, I don't know. I think it really, like, in terms of shooters.
In terms of shooters, or
I would say that it's leaning more on multiplayer. Just you have a lot of successful free-to-play games that are, you've got Team Fortress 2, you've got Blacklight Retribution. You have all these games that are doing really well or reasonably well, and they're popular. I think even Titanfall is going to be PvP only. There might be a single-player campaign. I'm not sure, but I'd wager that they're banking heavy on the PvP element. So I see the pendulum swinging that way. But at the same time, that's a really tough question to answer because there's no one plays just shooters, right? So right now everyone's playing The Last of Us, and the big draw for that game is the single player. Like, not the multiplayer. It's there, but a very small percentage of the people that play The Last of Us are going to do the multiplayer.
Seems like it seems like whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, it seems like selling the multiplayer aspect is more lucrative too because of the ability to monetize, after the sale with map packs and whatnot. Seem a lot
Absolutely.
more well received than like DLC, which a lot of people seem to be against. So.
Well, if you have a good game and you like it, and you get your friends playing it, and then all of a sudden everyone's playing it, it's ultimate replayability. As long as there's even a small degree of service put into the game. So even every few months there's a new map or there's a new game mode or just even something simple. Like if players love your game, they will keep playing it, and as long as you give them new content, and don't screw it up too bad, they'll keep playing your game.
Okay, yeah. To get into a more specific topic, because obviously that's pretty vague. It's actually kind of hard to talk about exact characteristics. So let's get into the concept of, I guess, a good game versus a successful game. And one example that I just want to bring up, and especially with folks in our industry, is we're typically folks that are going to be the hardcores. We're going to like these PC games and probably console games too, right? But one of the things most successful right now in the gaming industry is mobile, right? And a lot of people would probably classify, like in our community, would probably classify a lot of the mobile games as just junk that just sells. So I kind of want to get y'all's opinion about what you guys define as a good game, and whether the complexity of it, when it comes to either like a mobile like Angry Birds game versus something like Last of Us, plays into what you deem as a good game. Steven, why don't you go first?
I'm not a game developer.
You don't have to be a game developer. It's just your opinion, just as a gamer.
It's a really tough question. I mean, I kind of had to deal, not personally, but it's a lot of stuff that I thought about going to school of music, because it's the same thing in terms. It's exactly the same thing in terms of music.
Yep.
When you have certain groups that will spend like several months putting together a highly sophisticated album that requires instrumental virtuosos on the guitar, bass, drums, and other things too, and then they put out an album that sells maybe 10, 20,000 records, and then you have Justin Bieber put out an album that sells 50 million or however many triple platinum X-rated 360 no scope records he puts out. In terms of it's a really hard question to say, is it deserved or is it better because it's more popular? I don't know. For my personal opinion, and I'm sure Michael has his own thoughts, obviously, being directly involved with that, I think you have to be really important in terms of targeting your audience. What exactly do you want to do with what you're doing? So for instance, if I were to be doing music professionally, I would know exactly what kind of music I want to make and the audience I'm targeting, and as long as I'm making enough for it to be reasonably successful, I would be happy with that. I wouldn't my goal would never be to be the most famous or popular, Justin Bieber-esque kind of thing in terms of music. So I think it's just important to have to understand the product you want to make and what your end goal is, and that success isn't necessarily tied with success in your art, if that makes sense.
Right. Michael, what do you think?
I would agree with that to some to a little bit. You're kind of saying, what's your favorite album?
Yeah, in
a way you're saying that, and there's going to be people that are well, the White Album's my favorite album,
Well, you as a game designer, though, it's kind of like me. You're going to have a different opinion about it because the business side of it does play into, I think, what you would deem a good game is, right? Obviously, we all have our preferences for what we like, and of course, we'll probably just the kind of egotistical side of us are always going to think what we like is good, but
well, sure.
Being in the game industry, for me as a mobile developer, the amount, how popular my game is, actually plays into how successful the game is, as a developer, right? And
well, especially if it's a multiplayer game that, that's kind of, it's intrinsically, you can't separate how popular it is with its success.
Right. But does the success play into how good you think the game is as a game developer?
Oh, I don't know. I just kind of like what I like. I like simple mobile games as much as I like sort of indie or XBLA games as much as I like blockbusters, and they all have a sort of a different. I approach them all sort of differently. They have different time commitments. They have different times where I can actually play them. Maybe I only play stuff on the iPad when I'm traveling because that's the only thing I have when I'm traveling. In my world, I need that variety. I need the Justin Biebers, and I need uh, I need the Dream Theaters, or I need whatever. All these different facets. Like I've been a professional musician before. I've been playing drums for 25 years, and
Nice.
like it's to me it's the same thing. Like I need and I want all of those to exist and to be available to me. So when I want to listen to Justin Bieber, which may not be very often, but that one day a year where I'm like, you know what, this is totally working for me right now. Like I'm glad that it's there, and I feel the same with games. I don't play Angry Birds all the time, but when it's there and I can play it, I'm like, this is great.
Yeah, yeah.
Here's a question for you. Let's say that and I haven't played Offensive Comeback before. Do you have any kind of like a level up system in that game?
Yeah, players level up based on XP.
Oh shoot. I'm trying to think of a different example then. Well, I'll use that as an example and try not to let whatever your own personal biases to influence this. But like, let's say you had an idea for a shooter game, and you spent like the better part of like 2 or 3 years with the dev team making the perfect, and you want it to be like a perfectly balanced, even shooter. Everybody starts out. There is no leveling up or anything, and it's just like a shooter, and that's what you're going. Something Quake, like Quake. Okay. Let's say you had. Let's actually. Well, we can just use that example. Let's say you have a vision for Quake, and you're the one that makes Quake, Quake 3, Quake Live, whatever people play, and that's like your game, and it gets to a point to where it sells enough to like sustain itself. Like you everybody's getting paid, and you've even got enough money to start on a sequel. But then there are other games like Call of Duty or even other FPSs that are doing really well in the face of yours, and you've got a lot of people who are clamoring for, I want a level up system, I want to be able to unlock guns, I really want to level up, and that kind of a thing doesn't necessarily fit in with like your vision of a game. What kind of like personal conflict do you have there in terms of, I know I can do this that would make my game way more successful, but it doesn't really fit in with like how I personally envision my game, and it's just not something that I like. Do you understand like the conflict there? I don't want to use the term selling out, but kind of down that road of doing something against your own personal vision, knowing that you could capture a greater audience doing it.
I think that any game designer that says that they don't do that on a regular basis is lying to you.
Of course.
But I think one of the roles that I play being a lead designer is protecting the user's experience, right? Sure. And so I understand intimately what the user experience is right now. So I would have to look at that and go, well, I have a bunch of my users saying we want a level up system, and then I'd have to go, well, how does this really affect the core experience of the game? Are they still going to be able to run fast, shoot fast? Does it affect the balance of the game? Does it affect their access to weapons that would maybe make new players not want to play the game because they don't have the cool weapons, right? I think it's a case-by-case basis. I don't think that something like that. I would say that there's a middle ground in there where you could take an idea and incorporate it enough to satisfy the people who want it, but not ruin your game, depending on what the idea is. As long as it's just not totally evasive. I think you should have double jumps and everyone should run 4 times as fast. And how about infinite ammo and everyone has super weapons too, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
If everyone's clamoring for that, then you just make them in extreme game mode. That's a subset of your game modes or whatever. But I don't see that as a bad thing. If you're a designer and you've got this more of a single player crafted experience, and it's that's a much more those experiences need to be by nature more controlled. So it's hard for after the fact to go, hey, the publisher or the player base wants this in this experience. Like it's very I see that being a much more difficult task. How would I work a level up system into a single player game, whereas in a multiplayer game, you could it's a lot easier. Although then you're like, well, do I have to reset everyone now that I add this in?
That's a huge issue when
updating
games.
But I think it's important to hear your audience, and if they're the ones helping to pay for the game, and it's substantial enough to allow you to make those changes, I don't see why you wouldn't do that. I mean, many like free-to-play strategies are essentially that to some degree, where you make a game, you don't define it one way or another in terms of game modes. You try to be sort of in the middle. You try to look at what everyone plays, which is TDM, and you kind of skew for that. And then once you get off and running, then you talk to the community and try and sort of steer it in that way, as long as it's not affecting the game negatively.
Right. Yeah. It's funny because definitely my opinions on just this whole topic, good versus successful, it's changed. It's changed since I've gotten into mobile game development, and because I was definitely I'm kind of along the same lines as you guys, just having that parallel with music, and there's some games that just feed my hunger for on certain days versus other days, and a variety of games that I like are just vast, right? But I have to say that since I've been developing mobile games, like my view of things have changed pretty drastically, just because I don't know about you, Michael, but when I look at mobile games now, I look at them completely different ways. Before I just purely look at gameplay, but now it's like the genius of a lot of these games are just the money making side of it too, right? And how the game, incorporating the game into that is such a huge part. Like Candy Crush, right? I mean, Candy Crush is like brilliant on many levels.
Absolutely.
And
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, like, with mobile, like, you've got a huge player base, right? And you have a very low barrier to entry, which is 99 cents, or even free with a lot of these games. And as such, all those little mechanics that maybe with a console game you wouldn't worry so much about because someone's already spent $60 on the game and they're not going to just toss it aside. Those are really crucial. Like, when I'm navigating the menu, do I get confused? Do I understand what gold coins are? Do I understand how I earn them? Like, the menu, the economy, and the gameplay all have to sort of support each other in a way that's like super intuitive, and like, so even the dumbest of player can just pick this game up and go, this is what this is all about. I love it. And then like, oh, I've played this for 3 hours and now I'm out of coin. I'll spend $5 because I'm hooked, right? That's the whole mentality. So it's really, really crucial for all those systems to just be as unobtrusive as possible and to guide you through the learning experience, and just to kind of hand you this game on a silver platter and still make you feel successful and badass.
Right.
So yes, I agree with you. Like, looking at mobile games and how they elegantly solve some very complex solutions is a really good way to kind of go back and look at your own game, even a console game or a PC game, and go, how can we do this better? How can we make it easier for players? Because if it's easier for players, then more people will continue to play it, and less people will leave because they won't be frustrated, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things to talk about too is just that a lot of people for a long time have really concentrated on just graphics, right, and just the engine and that sort of thing. And I think people for a while, got a little bit away just from basic gameplay. And a game like Minecraft comes out, right, and just kind of blows everybody's mind because it's just like terrible graphics, right? Just compared to what we can do nowadays, and becomes a super successful game. What does that say? I mean, what does that say to you guys about maybe just the direction of maybe gaming studios today? I mean, are they a little bit misled, or do you think it's just there's just enough different niches for everybody, and that just happens to be another niche?
The success of Minecraft tells me that Legos are a classic.
Yeah. Okay.
I also think that it does speak. That game was from the outset like totally accessible to everyone, right? And to some degree, the visuals spoke to that, right? They spoke to a sort of a elementary design. And I've seen kids of all ages play this game and for hours and hours and hours and do nothing but just chip away at rocks. And having done the same as not so young of a person, there's something primal about that. There's something just sort of simple and satisfying to it that I kind of like that I can't explain it too well.
Exactly.
I kind of like that with Minecraft. I just have to sit someone down and say, here, just play this for half an hour. And they're probably going to get it, because I don't know how many dozens or hundreds of millions of people have already gotten it. But I think I'm glad that that Minecraft is the success that it is, because to me, my tagline has always been gameplay is greater than everything else. And I get in a lot of fights with artists over that.
Yeah, that's how I am too.
And there's compromise in anything, and to me, like Minecraft, sort of either purposefully compromised on that, or just that was what they did because it made sense, and in order to keep track of all these blocks, that was the best way to do it.
Okay, so how about last question on this? What do you guys think, or this kind of simplicity that we're talking about with gameplay? Do you think there's a level of complexity that needs to be there for it to be an esport? Because one of the things that I get into discussions with a lot of people are whether certain like mobile games are potentially esports, and I generally always disagree with them, saying that no, I don't think they are, even though I am in the mobile space. But a lot of the reasons that I don't think they are that have esports potential is just because they're just not complex enough for the spectators to really appreciate. So what do you guys think about it? Like, Steve, what do you think?
I think that there was actually a really good video on this, and the guy that does these videos always does it in a really annoying high-pitched voice, and it's a big turnoff, but the videos have had good content. I think the general gist of things is complexity is almost always bad, and depth is almost always good. So what I mean is a lot of complexity that doesn't feel complex, which I guess is kind of like depth, is really good. For instance, take a game like Quake 3, or when you're running on the front of things, like if you just look at it as a game, it doesn't look like it's very complex, and it's not really complex. Nothing in Quake is very complex, but the depth to the game is such that it can be an esport, and it was played at a very high level. There's a very big divide between an amazing player and a mediocre player. Same thing with League of Legends. If you look at League of Legends, it's not a very complicated game, but the depth that exists between just you can have your character position like 10 pixels in a different spot, as opposed to another one that could be the entire difference between first blood and winning the game. There's not very much complexity in League of Legends. There's a lot of depth to it, and such that it can be played at a professional level. Complexity is usually something that is universally agreed upon by anybody that's not an asshole to be a bad thing. When you look at games like EVE Online, that's a good example of there being a lot of depth, but a ton of complexity. And typically, the more complexity that's present, the more of a deterrent it is to new players, wanting to pick up your game. I think it's better to have an easily accessible game that provides a lot of depth, such that the complexity is introduced in a way that doesn't confuse people, rather than just right at the offset going, here's this huge fucking set of rules to try to follow and figure out and navigate your way through to make what could probably be an enjoyable game, but so many people are going to be turned off right from the start because the complexity of it is such a deterrent,
Yep. Michael, what do you think?
I would agree with that. I can, depending on the popularity of a complex game, though, like I can still see it being esports, because it would make for a good spectacle. Like, look how complex this is. Or maybe just the complexity itself does, with a proper team, lend itself to a really good match to watch. But I mean, in some ways, I can look at Tiny Wings, and go, that's an esport. Like, there's a huge gap between me and the people who are really good at Tiny Wings, and all you have to do is put your finger on the screen.
Okay.
So I mean, and that's an extreme example. Like, I don't know if anyone would want to watch that.
Right.
But I guess it kind of like what works for esports kind of depends on how you define esports. Is it team play? Is it someone doing hot laps, and that's interesting? Like, I don't know, but I agree that simple games, Quake Live, Quake 3 was a great example in that you can kind of pick it up and play it, and not. You don't have to bind your weapons. You don't have to know where the quad damage is. You don't have to know this as a player in order to have fun and actually even be competitive at a pub level. Well, I guess now you would, but but the gap between a pub player and a pro player highlights all those things that you would kind of take for granted as a new player, and you'd be like, oh, wow, okay, now maybe I should do that. Or I didn't realize the game had this depth. I was already having fun, and then now there's another layer to this. So I agree that complexity for complexity's sake doesn't really help anyone, and it certainly doesn't get people to play your game enough to actually have it be viable for esports, because you need a lot of people for that.
Definitely. I think one thing to think about too is I can't think of anything ever in the history of whatever that's been a popular athletic event or sport or esport that's been complicated. But I can think of a lot of really simple things that are incredibly popular. Things like, just looking at sports, things like soccer/football, American football, baseball. Like, every sport is an incredibly simple game. None of the rules are hard to learn. You can learn it in one game, but the depth that exists makes them entertaining to watch. And same thing with esports. Same things with board games. Chess is a very simple game. Chess, you could learn chess in 5 minutes. You could learn chess in 1 minute. The pieces all move their way, and that's it. But the depth that exists and the amount of strategies makes it kind of entertaining to watch. Unless there's something I'm missing, I don't know if you know anything, Chanman. I can't think of anything that's been very complex that's been popular as a spectator event.
Yeah.
Curling.
Curling?
I'm kidding. I have no idea.
Yeah.
Curling's pretty simple too, actually.
Yeah. I think it's I think it's the layers. Like, you've got this base layer of rules that anyone can get by on.
Definitely.
and then you've got this subset of rules that are adhered to by Olympians and pro players and all that, and that's that I think that's kind of what you're getting at, is that depth of being able to play it one way or another way, and it's still really the same core activity or core game.
Yeah, but I mean,
StarCraft is not very complicated. StarCraft is very easy. You make people, you mine minerals, you build an army, you kill the enemy. Every unit is different attack. The rules are very easy to learn. It's the depth that comes into the game. I'm sorry, I'm responding to chat right now.
But you have to say that StarCraft is probably more complex than another. Let's just say Quake. It's more complex than Quake. Even though, there's more depth to it too. I mean,
a little bit. I mean, yeah, you could say it's a little bit more complex, but in terms of it being complicated, like, you could learn how to play StarCraft in terms of knowing what all the units do in a day very easily. You could very easily learn it in an hour or two, But yeah, I would say that StarCraft 2 is probably a little bit more complicated than, like, Quake or a MOBA.
Yeah. And one of the things that when we're talking about esports is accessibility, right?
Mm-hmm.
And all those sports that you named before that are simple things, the reason they are popular is because we either played them ourselves because they're so simple to play, or we just understand it because it's such a simple game. And the mass, the demographic, you're obviously going to have a potential to acquire these people, right? As fans or spectators, if they can understand it, and that's the big challenge we have right now in esports is really having these games that are easily understandable by the mass demographic, because right now we still rely on everybody playing it. So that's
one of the things that I like. If you listen to, I think it was Dustin Browder, and one of the things they were talking about in making StarCraft 2, they said that one of the hardest things was to tell their graphic artists that they have to chill out on everything, because the graphic artists you don't want to go crazy in terms of being able to show things like psionic storms or nukes. There was a whole lot more that they wanted to do, and Dustin Browder were talking about how they constantly have to reel things in. Like when you look at a psionic storm, you have to instantly be able to see it, look that it hurts, and then know it, and then that's it, without getting confused or have all the particle, all this stuff that's confusing to an observer. And it was really interesting. I wish I had the link to that video talking about how from the ground up they kind of worked to make the art consistent with an easily accessible, easily observable competitive esport game.
Yeah, Mike, what do you think of that? Like, especially with offensive combat, how does that play into? Because I think you have some desire to make it a esport, right?
Yeah, definitely. We just it does, the game itself absolutely needs to be simple. Like you said, when people are watching it, they need to kind of be like, hey, I could do that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So our game from the outset wasn't designed to be a very complex shooter either. Like, we really tried to keep it as simple as possible while still introducing unique mechanics. So I totally agree with that, and much with we're trying to always, when we're thinking about showing things on the screen or showing things in the HUD, we're always doing this thing like, can I look at it? Can I understand it very quickly? Can I get the gist of it? Is this communicating what it's supposed to be? Like, all those things, all those little things really, really mean a lot. And as it goes for StarCraft, it goes for offensive combat too. You definitely need that elemental communication to go on almost at a subconscious level. In order for people to kind of sink into it, and it needs to be super simple.
Right. I'm kind of just showing offensive combat, right, for those of you that haven't seen it. We go to offensivecombat.com and check out this game. This is the game this is Michael's game, basically. Just wanted to help you promote a little bit while you're on the show before you take off, right? So as you can tell, like, after you kill people, you can pwn people and do things like
you can pwn people.
Yeah, you can debag them, and
you can fart on people.
That's why it's called offensive combat.
My neighbor was asking me the other day. She's like, "What do you make again? Would my kids like it?" And her kids are like 12 and 13. I'm like, "Well, you can fart on people in my game," and she's like, "Oh, they're gonna love it." So I guess I made a shooter for 13-year-olds.
Yeah, exactly. 13 and 30-year-olds.
Absolutely.
But all right, Michael. Well, I know we only had about an hour, scheduled about an hour with you. So thanks for coming on. Actually, let's see if we have any questions. Maybe one question for you, Henry. Any questions for Michael here?
Yeah, there's one question on the Reddit thread from Nuclear Starcraft, and it's a pretty long question, so I'll kind of cut it short. As a game developer, is it worth porting a game to Linux or making it from the beginning? Because apparently that scene's like growing now, and it's like almost as popular as Macs.
What?
Making games on Linux is more popular than making
Linux
on Mac?
systems are as popular as Macs? Is that true?
That's what the question says.
Well, assuming it's true for a minute, because I don't know, I really don't know.
Yeah.
It's feasible. If there's people there, basically, you go where the money is, and so it would be, you don't want to fracture your base. You don't want to fracture your dev resources, and then compromise maybe the main game that you're making, which in our case would be PC. So I think it's good to do when you can, and it's clear that you should, right? And every dev has a different sort of bar for that, and a different level of what's acceptable for them, and also a different level of involvement in terms of porting it to Linux. So if you're making mobile, it could be as easy as hitting a button on the build button that says Linux. I could be oversimplifying that, but just for example, like, you can get close to that. So whereas like with offensive combat, we would have to, I don't even know where that would start. Maybe it wouldn't be that big of a deal because we're dealing with browsers, and so
yeah, I mean, it's platform
yeah.
right? I mean,
yeah. So I don't know, and the ease of that would be better answered by our lead programmer. But if there was enough people, and or it was a super simple thing to do, I don't see why a developer wouldn't do it. Because you're expanding the range of people who can access your game.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to think if we run on Linux or not. I don't think we do, but I could be wrong.
I would guess you do, given that it's.
Well,
it depends on the plugins, I guess, but I would assume that you would, because all these browser-based games are supposed to be platform independent, right? And
well, in our case, we're dependent on how compatible the Unity web player is with Linux versions of browsers, right? So that's what I'm not familiar with right now.
That's true. I guess Unity doesn't. Yeah, Unity doesn't run on Linux, so that's.
Yeah. So if that doesn't, then that's our obstacle right there.
Yeah. But you could push a button and make a mobile version.
Yes.
Push a button.
Or what I mean, like Unity, which is kind of a good example, and like it's very easy for you to make a mobile version of a game, iOS or Android, basically by just checking a couple of different check boxes in the build window, and then clicking build. So that statement was a little bit of an oversimplification, but I'm sure if we can't do that right now, we'll be able to do that soon with Linux.
It's definitely getting there.
It seems that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Porting to. Ooh, I hear myself from somebody. Uh-oh. Is it me? That's not me, right? I mean, the ability to port to multiple platforms is getting easier and easier every day. So I think you're right. I think in about a year or two, you're going to be. You're going to be able to port to every single platform, pressing a button. But
and then hopefully you're not stretching your marketing budget too thin because you've got to market on these different platforms, and do you have enough manpower to deal with it and manage it? Like
I've gone through that. I've gone through having to use porting houses, or I mean, actually for a while in mobile, like we wrote all of our apps on like 4 different platforms. Believe it or not, it was fucking crazy. Yeah. But all right, Mike. Well, I'll let you go. Get back to work.
All right.
It's in the middle of your work day.
Thank you.
But
thanks for
appreciate you coming on, man. It's always a pleasure.
My pleasure. No,
everybody go check out offensivecombat.com. Follow Michael at Michael Schorr on Twitter, and just play the game. Oh, by the way, Mike, I forgot to tell you, one of the folks that helps me with the audio versions of my show. He said after you appeared on Climbing the Ladder, he started playing Offensive Combat, and now he's like #1 in EU or something at it.
Oh, that's killer. I'm glad to hear that.
yeah, so it's kind of cool. I just figured I'd tell you.
Well, that's cool.
All right, buddy.
All right, thanks again.
Yep, take care. And why don't we take a quick break? We'll take a quick break, guys, and then we'll get all these overlays situated. We'll be right back.
All right. Take care, guys.
All right, later. All right, we are back. And all right, going to close off the show with one more topic, and then we'll do Q&A. But for those of you that haven't asked your questions yet, go ahead and post it in the Reddit thread. I linked it a little earlier, or tweet it with the pound unfiltered on it, and Trio Henry will find it. But let's close off with DreamHack Summer. I was wanting to get. I was going to start off the show with that, but until the NASL news came out, I kind of had to rearrange everything. So yeah, I want to talk a little bit about DreamHack Summer. Did you get a chance to watch any of it, Steven?
Oh yeah, dude, I watch all of DreamHack.
Fucking A, what do I even ask? But it was for those of you who didn't watch it, it was a great event. Lots of storylines as usual. That's like probably the most consistent thing about DreamHack is there's probably like 10 storylines to talk about. People beating players that were surprising, and some of those being Elfie beat Tasia, TLO beat Squirtle, TLO beat Life,
and
what else?
The final winner?
Yeah, the final winner, Stardust. Stardust was obviously super surprising for folks. Oh, wait, Show beat Life.
And
I mean, that was probably one of the biggest things.
Show beating Life was probably, from what I could read, was like the highlight of everything.
Yeah, it was. Like, I mean, the crowd went nuts. There's these awesome pictures of Show. His team or the group that he had around him just mauled him in his booth. I mean, it was like he won at that moment. It was pretty cool to see. But yeah, Show. How about Show, man? He took a year off and came back to StarCraft, and he's been actually playing pretty well like lately. But I mean, I don't think anybody would have guessed he would have beat Life. And in some ways, I think it ranks up there as the biggest upsets ever. So
maybe after TLO beat Life was just so demotivated.
Well, at least with ZVZ, there's some level of craziness involved. But TVZ, it's pretty straight up beating Life, who's obviously amazing. So yeah, congrats to Show for having that run. That was an amazing run for him, and it's pretty cool to see. Pretty cool to see the foreigners being able to beat like these top level Koreans, and ones that aren't even necessarily really deemed that good by most of the community. So it's kind of awesome to see. And then Stardust winning the whole thing. I don't know if you saw Stardust, but he's a Korean player that's on a pretty small team, NYI, and he spoke English on all of his interviews. Like he wasn't the greatest English, but he really opted for trying to speak English during all of them, and the guy's pretty funny, I have to say. He's pretty awesome. Hopefully you can catch some of the VODs if you didn't see it, but his interviews with like In Control and stuff were really, really good. But overall, awesome event as usual. Got over, I don't know, it's probably 120,000 again at some point, just with all the streams in the finals. So Robert Olin, man, he's one lucky bastard because some crazy upsets seem to always happen at his tournaments, and hopefully he continues with that, and they continue doing what they're doing. But catch the VODs. I think the VODs are available. The replays aren't out quite yet, but yeah, watch it if you can. And you need to watch. See what games to watch. Watch the Show series for sure. There's one series where it came down to elimination, and it was completely crazy how fortuitous. Was it? No, it wasn't Show. Sorry, it was. God, what match was that? Shit, I'm like forgetting right now. It was Jaedong. It was Jaedong against Stardust. Was it Jaedong against Stardust? I can't remember. It came down. Yeah, the Jaedong games. Watch the Jaedong semifinal game. It's really, really good. I felt like Nathanias and Apollo casted really well. Nathanias too did an awesome job.
Yeah, actually, I think one of the biggest standouts from this tournament is Nathanias established himself as a good caster. A lot of people seem really impressed with his casting. Yeah,
he's Nathan. I know Nathan really well, so I'm obviously biased with my opinion of it, but I felt like he did an amazing job. And towards the end there, as he was getting more and more comfortable through the weekend, by the last day, like during that particular series, I mean, they were like shouting at one point just because it was so crazy at the end of a particular game. And I just thought it was awesome. Like, we need more of that type of casting in StarCraft. Just crazy, emotional, almost Korean style casting in some ways.
Or like Day9 style, right?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah. Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. That type of stuff. It's nice to have sometimes.
But yeah,
Nathanias did great, and hopefully we will see him at more of these, I guess, one-off events, right? Because all these organizations seem to be done hiring, except for NASL. Sounds like they might be still hiring. So,
do you think I can get a job casting there? Do you think I can do it?
You
Think they'll hire me on?
Oh, you never know. NASL? Maybe. MLG? No. Hell no. But,
Really? Me and Sundance are so tight, though.
oh, God. But all right, why don't we do some more questions? Henry, you got some more questions for us from the viewers and Twitter and Reddit?
Sure. This one was meant to be for Michael, but we didn't pick it up before he left. But I'm sure,
Okay.
Chris, you can answer this one since you're an expert in mobile game. What does Michael and everyone think about mobile games cannibalizing each other and like in crazy numbers with successful models slash dynamics? So like Angry Birds, Clash of Clans, and such.
So what do we think of them cannibalizing each other? I guess you mean like a bunch of copies of the same game, I guess is what
Yeah,
they're
like,
talking about.
Did somebody say
Like-
Zynga?
Yes, Zynga Games was mentioned.
What Zynga copying
Zynga is
other?
like they're notorious for doing that. You know, it's
Yeah.
like a Reddit post like every 6 months about some game that they blatantly, completely, and totally ripped off of, isn't there?
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, there are a lot of core type of game models that people try to do different different flavors of. For instance, Match 3, right? I think Match 3 was probably made popular by just. I mean, the first game that I remember being Match 3 like was Dr. Mario, I think way back, and now of course like Bejeweled made it super popular, right? And it's kind of gone a step further now with games like Candy Crush, which is amazingly successful. But a lot of these kind of core concepts have kind of developed through the years, and a lot of people have been copying them. And right now, honestly, just given what I know about the mobile industry, that copying these kind of models, and there's like probably 10, 20 copies of the same game for every game, probably. It doesn't matter, like, because there's the pie is so huge right now that you can be successful being like the 5th best Bejeweled, or being even the 10th best Bejeweled. Honestly, you can still be like crazy successful. So cannibalization, there's probably not that much cannibalization right now, just because I don't know, people are pretty fickle in the mobile world. They switch games all the time, so the lifespan of the game is really something you can talk about. But you'll see. I mean, I think I looked at Tic-Tac-Toe the other day because I was just playing around with maybe a Tic-Tac-Toe game, and there's like 50 Tic-Tac-Toe games or something, and a lot of them are successful. A lot of them crazy successful. So it's kind of weird. The mobile space is kind of weird that way. Any other questions?
Okay, there's a lot from this person called. Okay, I can't read that, but what does the future hold for the Superstar Strikers tournament that you held?
Oh, Superstar Strikers. I'm definitely going to be doing another Superstar Strikers, invitational, same kind of format, in July, because June is just so busy. This weekend is Home Story and that Red Bull thing, and then next weekend is Anaheim. So everybody's just crazy busy. So sometime in July, either first weekend or second weekend of July, given what the schedule is. I'll try not to schedule on top of WCS, because not to kill eSports again. But yeah, so it'll probably be something like that, and it'll probably be similar. I'll just try to get more people involved. Overlays will look better. It'll be more professional from the standpoint of marketing. It won't be like last minute like it was. Dude, quit yawning.
I can't help it, man.
God,
I don't know why.
I'm
Maybe it's the time of the day. I'm not tired. Like, I have plenty of sleep. I just ate. Fuck, man. I'm sorry. I can't help it.
It's all right.
You should get like European style announcers for like your Star Strikers games, like the people that do the announcing on like the World Cup football and whatnot. I think that'd be funny.
Yeah, like that'd be pretty easy to get those guys. I mean,
Well, not
way
those
to get
guys
those
exactly,
guys.
obviously, but I was saying like casting it in that style would be entertaining.
yeah, it might be interesting to get a European to help cast it. See if
Or also your call screener guy, I like him. He's doing a great job, but instead of him, you should have got somebody with like an Indian accent. So it could be like you're offshored it. Be funny. There you go. That's all I got for you.
all right.
Alright.
Henry, you have another question?
Our next question is our StarCraft more important than Team Liquid nowadays?
Oh shit.
That's a good question.
Let's see. If we Google StarCraft, I wonder what comes up. Got StarCraft 2.
All right, let's see what happens when I do that.
Neither
Google
Reddit
StarCraft.
nor Team Liquid are page 1. Oh, StarCraft Reddit is top of page 2.
Really?
It's not even there.
Oh, it is.
Where's Team Liquid at?
Oh
How
my
far
God,
down?
Team Liquid's not even on here. Holy smokes, this is crazy.
What about StarCraft?
Wikipedia is
4?
on there before. Wait, did we miss it? Let me look at the first page again. Oh my God, man. Sorry, somebody needs to work on the SEO for Team Liquid. Holy shit.
Maybe. Well, I kind of wonder how many users there are on Team Liquid as opposed to the SC subreddit. The StarCraft subreddit also benefits from the fact that it's part of the Reddit community too. So you've got the whole intertwining of accounts from people that go to a lot of different.
Oh, sorry, our screen's messed up. Yeah, that's true. I think Reddit right now. I mean, I look at both obviously, and before I'd look at Team Liquid way more than Reddit, but nowadays I feel like Reddit is more of the pulse, of just what's going on, just the news that's going to be happening. You're going to see it a lot faster on Reddit just for the sheer fact that you can see 25 items, at one time, just on one page versus Team Liquid where it's like you can only see like the top 5 in each under.
I still have
forum.
trouble navigating those fucking Team Liquid forums too. Jesus
Yeah.
Christ. They need to. I wish they would just take a moment to just completely rethink their entire setup for their forums because maybe I'm just really dumb. But honestly, if I have trouble looking at a website, I spend a lot of time on the internet, and if it's even a little bit confusing for me to look at it, I can't imagine the average person that just wants to find a Team Liquid fan to try to navigate the forums. It's like it would be a big pain in the ass. So I don't know if Team Liquid is ever going to redo the way that they do forums. But another thing you got to consider too is if there is anything big on Team Liquid, it's always going to be on Reddit too.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
Whereas something big on Reddit might not make the posting guidelines or something of Team Liquid, or that maybe somebody's banned. So it's I don't know.
That's true. Team Liquid nowadays is a subset of Reddit. So
it's also nice because on the StarCraft subreddit, if somebody important made a post, usually it's upvoted to the top. Circle jerk or whatever you want to call it. But for instance, if that same Reddit post was made about NASL picking up. I was able to see the post about NASL picking up the WCS. I click it, and the first response is Total Biscuit. If that was a Team Liquid, site, I don't know how many pages I would have to go through to find something. Hopefully the op edits his post, but if he doesn't, then you're fucked.
Yeah. It's true. It's definitely way better in that regard. I hate having to read through every single comment sometimes, especially when I get there late. It's like, oh my God, there's fucking 10 pages of comments to look through. All right, Henry, what's next?
Alright, player pools at LAN events is noticeably weaker in 2013 than in 2012. He's asking, is the era of weekend tournaments over with WCS and Pro League in play? I know, Chris, you have some views on this.
Oh, I don't think they're that bad. I mean, DreamHack was pretty darn good, right? Don't you think?
Is he talking about smaller tournaments like Zeke and whatnot, or is he talking about?
Yeah, you talking about big? You think he's
No,
talking
I'm
about
talking
big
about
tournaments?
LANs, maybe MLG and DreamHacks. The player pool's smaller. I'm pretty sure about that.
In terms of the variety of players going to events?
Well, I mean, with MLG cutting out open bracket and a lot of these things, the player pool's smaller and there's less new players coming up.
Yeah. My opinion, I feel like there's been a lot of new players kind of popping up lately. With the WCS, right? I mean, we're seeing Drunken Boy and all those guys, right, starting to appear. But at these LANs, MLG's 128 players. I mean, that's quite a few, I think. And given that there's not a ton, like a crazy number of Koreans. I mean, there's a good number, but not crazy. That I feel like it's a pretty good mix. I don't know. I don't actually see it as being too big of a problem right now, just given that WCS is trying to fill in that void. And, we're starting to see some Shoutcraft Americas. We'll see more. I think we'll see more in the coming months. Just smaller tournaments that actually have some notable prize money. I'm hoping we'll see another Lone Star Clash and some SoCal kind of tournament soon. But
that's an interesting thing that somebody brought up too. Now with StarCraft being kind of an older game, you have to wonder how much new blood is flowing into the scene.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like, are there any pro gamers that are going to be winning in 1 year that are going to start today? Would you really want to start playing StarCraft today if you wanted to play professionally?
Would you want to start playing? I mean, a lot of people. I mean, do a lot of people really just start playing the game all of a sudden just to be like in hopes of being a professional versus somebody? Most people have already been playing the game for a while, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I mean. That's what I mean.
Probably not. I mean, it's a daunting task. Even if there were facilities to get there, it's a daunting task, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
I mean, I don't think it changes that so much, but it's just the players that are already in it are just helping those people get to it, right?
Yeah.
Henry, next up, just jump in with the questions.
So for a follow up, what do you guys think about like the league play for WCS and Pro League compared to the weekend tournaments then?
Oh, I've never been a huge fan of the weekday type of league content. League meaning like WCS League and Pro League and that kind of thing. The main reason I mean it's great. It's cool seeing all the players playing, and there is something of value that they're playing for every single time. But it doesn't have the feel of just like DreamHack this weekend. This kind of 2-day, 3-day, just tournament that somebody's going to win a giant prize at, and every single match you play can be life or death for you. That type of excitement is for me is a lot of what StarCraft eSports is about, and so MLGs and DreamHacks are kind of, I don't know, for me it's kind of imprinted in me that's that way, and the whole league stuff is, for me it's been more about just like a business kind of thing where leagues you can have content every day, right? So that these people can obviously make ad revenue and that sort of thing every day, and it's more about just the amount of content. So I don't know, what do you think, Steven?
I don't know. I feel like it should have been more popular. I don't know why League Play never really caught on much. Maybe it's just the way that it was managed was really poorly, or it wasn't hyped well enough, or I don't know. I always felt like League Play, like a lot of people would catch on towards the end when they're like, okay, well, who are like the top 4 teams? But like the actual League Play itself never seemed to be that popular. I would have to think a long time, like how does LCS, how do they make it so much better? Maybe it's just because of the amount of money being played for, so the teams are better, but I don't know.
Well, LCS is a little bit different because the games themselves are really long too. So having it encompassed in a weekend is pretty crazy and hard, in some ways. If you're going to talk about like a large tournament, so it's different with League. But even with League, I mean that All-Star event was awesome, right?
Sure.
That was in China, and if we had more of those type of events, I mean I think you could have a similar feel too. But it's hard to compare because there's nothing else to compare it with right now.
Yeah.
With I mean LCS is all there is for the most part. But with StarCraft, yeah, I just think that for me it's just more exciting. I mean, if we had DreamHacks every weekend or every other weekend, would I still feel the same? I don't know, maybe not. But right now, just given the amount that there is, it's just it's pretty awesome having these weekend events that I can just kind of power through in 3 days. Like I can set off this weekend and it's like, hey, I'm not going to get much sleep this weekend because I know I'm watching this event, versus this league that I can just kind of wait until it plays itself out in the end in the playoffs. It's like baseball. Baseball's, unless I'm playing fantasy baseball, it's kind of boring as hell to kind of watch every day. So I just wait until like the playoffs in the World Series where we're actually paying attention. It's kind of that similar feel to this, and yeah, so.
All right. And Steven, how do you feel about being picked up by STXO?
I'm very excited. I look forward to my training with them. Hopefully I can put some good results out and please my fans.
What do you guys think about Major being teamless again?
Oh yeah, I forgot about
Oh, that sucks.
Why is it?
Because he got kicked off. He wasn't good enough.
Yeah, but you see any silver linings to it, or no?
No, that sucks. It's terrible. There's no silver lining there. It was always his dream to play for a Kespa team, and he got the boot because he wasn't good enough. What could possibly be a silver lining? It sucks. I feel really bad for him. Hopefully he can... I mean, if he continues to play, hopefully it doesn't affect his mentality or anything too much, and he can find himself on a different team or something like that. It would be really hard, though, for Major... for any foreign team to pick him up, because he's going to want to go back to a Korean team ASAP,
Yeah, I mean, he definitely wants to be there. There's no doubt about it. But I don't know. I feel like with WCS the way it is right now, that he talked about coming back for it.
Sure.
I mean, when it first came up, it was like almost a no-brainer he was coming back.
Yeah.
For WCS
Didn't he win Major 1 WCS Mexico? Didn't he?
Oh yeah, like the previous year. But he didn't do well in WCS this year. But I think he could. He should absolutely. His skill is definitely high enough that he should be kicking ass in WCS NA. So I don't know. I mean, I know it's his dream to definitely play on a Korean team, but I could see still some good things happening for him. A foreigner, I think I think it's gotten to the point where at least a foreign team would pick him up, right? More so than like a year and a half ago, maybe with some of the team drama he's had in the past, but.
Sure.
Henry, next question.
That's about it.
There's one more. What do you guys think about graphics in games and how it affects esports?
Oh. I don't know.
I think graphics are really, 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 really important, and that's one of my biggest critiques in the Dota 2 and League get like an admin. Like, it's really easy with StarCraft to look at StarCraft and to know what's going on, you know? When a Marine dies, the blood appears, he's dead. When you see shots coming out of something, you know it hurts.
Yeah.
You know Siege Tank's shots splash. When you see a Siege Tank fire, you know it's splash damage, you know? I think that for the most part, the StarCraft 2 graphics are very on point in terms of seeing what things do. The time warp bubble, even, from the, from that shit, you could tell what's going on. Everything is like really, really, really nice in terms of that. When you look at games like League of Legends and Dota 2, it is fucking impossible to know what the fuck is going on. I don't know what anything is doing ever. Like, I know what League because I play the game, but if you didn't play League, you'd have no fucking idea what's going on ever. If you look at Dota 2, you have no idea what's going on. One thing that I would like to see, and I've actually talked to a couple guys that write about it, I don't know if they'll ever do it though, and they, it's always like, oh, that's an interesting idea, is I've always wondered, what they should have like an observer UI that has a consistent color scheme for everything. Dota 2 and League should both do it, where like and they can have their own graphics for if you're playing, and that's fine. But for the observer UI, then all you do is you make it so that offensive spells are red, heals are green, and like CC is blue or something like that.
Yeah.
Every spell should be like that. So like because like right now, if you like taking League for example, like Sona alts. I don't know what the fuck that is. It's like the little like that little wave appears. Like I don't know intuitively. Like, did it do damage? Is it a stun? Like, I'm not actually sure. I see everybody stun afterwards, so I kind of know it. If you look at Karma's chains that are like blue, like what is that? Like, is it a heal or is it like I don't understand. Like there's a lot of things like Ezreal's W speeds his allies up. Like I would have no idea just looking at that. They really need to work on the intuitiveness of the graphics tying in with the gameplay, because right now it's abysmal at how terribly horrible it is to look at a game at any MOBA to try to figure out what's going on by just looking. You can't do it. Whereas with StarCraft 2, you could know jack shit about it, and you would know instantly, like, everything that's going on. Like, you could tell, like I said, like, you look at a storm, you know what's going on. You look at a star shooting something, very easy. Everything is very easy.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny you mentioned the Siege Tank, because I think the Siege Tank is probably the only thing that's Splash right now that doesn't animate in the form of like a projectile or like the only thing that you see is just kind of blood splatting off people, right? Like that's probably the one thing that isn't like super super obvious. But everything else is like, even fungal right now is like, right, you can see a projectile fly from it and everything. Sure. And I totally agree with all those points. Yeah, I definitely agree with all those points. With the League, your comments on League, I get the utility of making everything like kind of the color schemes, but I think it would take away the uniqueness of the characters, right? I mean that's kind of
but you can't sacrifice the uniqueness for. You can still have the same particle effects. I mean, just try to keep the colors consistent. Like you got to strike a balance between the uniqueness and the art and the functionality of everything. Because functionally, like it's just it's impossible to look at any League or Dota 2 team fight and have any fucking idea what's going on, because everything is different colors. Like I've played a fair bit of League now. Like I'm fairly good at League, and looking at Dota 2, I have no fucking idea what's going on at all. Like I might be able to guess if I like sit and analyze a fight several times. But this is somebody with a lot of experience in League, and I can't figure out like there's something wrong with that, Yeah,
I mean there's just a lot of units too to have to like explain. Like how many times in a StarCraft 2 battle do you have 10 different characters, all different types of characters all fighting at once?
Sure.
I mean, there's usually like 6, or 7 or something like that. It's not, and they all don't have crazy like 4 individual powers too.
But that's the nice thing about having a consistent graphics scheme. Like if you see somebody running away, for instance, like I see somebody running away, okay? And as they're running, I see Graves launch his R, which is an attack, Ezreal launch his Q, and Orianna launch her ball to attack. And I see all of that. And I see it, and even one of them hits, and it's like, wow, those were all red. It was just damage. The guy got away, okay, whatever. And I understand exactly what happened there. Whereas, let's say it's something like I see Jarvan, like EQ, and I see, and then I see Graves R and an Orianna attack, and I see the EQ barely missed, but he glows green or something, or blue when he does the EQ, and then I realize, like, holy fuck, like, if he would have landed that EQ, that would have been huge, because I see the color is it was some kind of CC, maybe a knockup, maybe a stun, the audience gets so much more out of seeing what exactly it is, so then when the entire audience is going, whoa, shit, because, oh my god, he just narrowly avoided that CC, somebody who doesn't necessarily play the game all the time can look and see, just graphically identify that, oh wow, if that would have hit, he would have been CC'd, and that probably would have been a kill,
Yeah. Yeah, no, I can see that. It would definitely help with the accessibility of it for sure.
Yeah, and like I said, even if it was just like an observer UI, like you don't have to change the entire game's graphics like with single player. Yeah. But if they just had an observer UI that looked like that, I feel like it would be sick that anybody could look at the game and go like, oh, cool, like I know, like somebody comes in for a gank and they turn on and then they turn green and you see like Morgana's shield at the same time. It's like, oh my god, like that shield wasn't sick because she shielded, but it was sick because she shielded, and then the guy turned green or whatever, but it didn't do anything because she shielded. So like I understand now why everybody is cheering or happy or whatnot.
Yeah, and it could just be a filter. That's true. Yeah, I mean you could choose to use it or not, right? Sounds like an interesting idea to me. Henry, you there?
Henry died.
Yeah. I think that's it for today.
That's it for the questions? Okay, all right. Make sure. Let me. One last refresh, and then I guess we'll call it a day. Call it a night. Let's see. All right, well, I think that's it, guys. Did a pretty good show, Steven. Good stuff.
Man. Good job. I'm so fucking proud of you.
Oh shit, man. I saw your blog. Oh, actually, we should probably bring it. I saw your blog and you listed all those machines you built.
What? I listed all the machines I built?
Did you? I thought you listed a bunch of machines that you, or just the
I
specs
think it was
on
just
a,
my. I think it was just specs on my
build.
computer.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. How do you like it?
It's fine. I mean, I've been using
I mean,
it.
you said your H220 died again, right?
Yeah, I don't know about that, but if this one dies, I'm probably just gonna fucking buy an H100i or some shit. I'm pretty disappointed. This is my RMA, and it died completely a few days ago. I was trying to play games with Aaron, and my computer was laggy as fuck, and I had no idea why. And so I checked the temperatures on the off chance that my processor was being throttled, and I see that my temps are all hovering at around like 91 degrees. It's like, oh, okay, well, this shit is fucked. So I sat there trying to troubleshoot for like an hour. Finally, I turned my computer back on. I underclocked the processor so that it would try to generate as little heat as possible. And then in the middle of nowhere, when I'm just like reading forums, I'm idling at like 65 degrees. All of a sudden, bam, it just turns back on out of nowhere. It just turns back on out of absolutely nowhere. Nothing changed. And now it's still on, so I have no idea.
Oh man, not a power issue, right?
No, what? No way. I got like an 850 watt and only one GPU. I have plenty of power.
Yeah, definitely.
So I don't know.
Cool. But might have to have you build me one of these days, dude.
I'll do it, dude. Oh, so
give me a discount. Give me a discount.
Possibly. Yeah. I'll charge you 14% instead of 15%. It's like my girl discount.
Girl discount. Thanks, man.
Speaking of girls and discounts, no discounts, but I'm going through a computer build coming up where there's a girl who is trying to get into streaming, or she wants a computer that can do streaming and games, and she went through me to order the parts, but she wants to build it herself, so I'll be walking her through that build via Skype.
I thought you already did this. You haven't done this yet? Oh, I thought you had done this.
Because we're still finalizing parts and whatnot, so that'll be fun.
Okay.
And I'm hopefully, my goal is that she puts hers together at the same time I put this one together. The parts are starting to come in. Look, I get to do my first Haswell build. How cool is that? I've never worked with one of these before.
Oh, yeah? Okay. That should be cool.
I guess.
Yeah, let me know how that goes, man. If it's
overclocking
easy.
and all that
Yeah,
shit.
if it's easy or not. But all right, good deal. So why don't we close out the show? Henry, it was great having you on, bud. We'll try to have you on every week. Get us going. I mean, it's kind of the first week of doing this, so we'll iron things out, have it go a little bit quicker.
Did we talk about Idra playing Terran?
Oh, we haven't talked about that yet. I haven't actually watched it. Has anybody watched it? Henry, you watched it?
Idra played
Yeah,
Terran.
a little bit. He's just learning all the other races now since he's not playing competitively anymore.
Yeah, we talked about it, right? We talked about how it would be probably amazing for him to stream himself learning Terran in particular, given that he played Terran in Broodwar. Yeah, it's a good idea. It'd be cool if he's, I don't know, he's commentating a lot as to like some of the cool nuances instead of just building hellbats all day.
Definitely.
Yeah. But all right, Henry, you want to do shout outs real quick?
My shoutouts are to you, Chairman, and Mr. Destiny over here. Thank you for having me on. I'll try and improve on what I've been doing.
Cool.
That's it.
I love you.
Steven? Shout outs? Anybody?
Shout out to Phoenix for their shit. Phoenix should be having a keyboard coming out soon, which will be fun. Finally get off these fucking brown keys, or these fucking red keys to switch to browns, which will be fun.
It's quite.
Yeah. Shout out to Brandon Crack. What's his last name?
Brandon Crack.
Oh yeah, it is Crack. Brandon Crack. He's the guy that does the CRT League, which hopefully we'll be playing in this weekend. We should be playing in this weekend, the online tournament.
Nice.
CRTleague.com. That'll be fun. And shout out to Chanman's mother for giving birth to a wonderfully productive Asian man.
Hell yeah, Mama Chan. Shout outs for me. The two of you guys, Henry, of course, for hopping on for the first time. Henry helps me out with a lot of stuff show wise for a long time now, so he's kind of been behind the scenes, just the mod behind the scenes guys. And Steven, of course, for doing this with me every week, always fun. And although all of you guys that had questions about last week, I know last week that was crazy. Okay, so but we're still gonna do that. We're gonna try it again one of these days. But I'm gonna give you guys notice so that a lot of you guys can write in questions, and like we won't have only like 3 to choose from, and one of them with the fucking voice modifier the whole time. So I'll let you guys know when we do that, so that again, all of you guys that were saying like, oh my god, these question askers suck and all this stuff, that you guys can actually do something about it. But check out the VODs on youtube.com/ChanmanV. You can. I have audio versions too that I usually list in the Reddit threads that I post once the VODs are up. So kind of check that out too. I'm trying to get an RSS feed to give you guys, but it's just been taking longer than it should. And next week, I think we'll be doing this again, right, Steven?
Yeah, sure.
All right, cool. Next week we'll be on again, and Wednesday Night Sprites tomorrow night. Thursday we got Climb the Ladder with Red Eye's going to be our guest, so we'll probably be just talking about general things with Red Eye, just because we haven't had him on in a while. But until then, it's ChanmanV, Destiny, and Trio. See you next week. Later.
Rip.
Destiny makes us better.